Hey, so recently my channel passed 100,000 subscribers. Incredible, and I can't thank you all enough. You all have been awesome and I had a ton of fun creating content for this channel. Now when you pass 100,000 subscribers, YouTube eventually sends you what's called a silver play button. A nice plaque that you can hang on your wall or sneakily put into the background of your Zoom meetings to flex on your colleagues. But being a hardware hacker, I had different plans. After checking whether the play button is conductive, I wanted to use the play button to hack something. And given this channel's history, what better device to hack than the original Nintendo Game Boy? And so today we are going to dump the boot ROM of the original Game Boy using a silver play button. The setup is quite simple. I've got an old, taken apart Game Boy here, and I also put a custom ROM that I wrote onto a flash card. And if we turn on the Game Boy, we can see that it says failed to dump boot ROM. However, if we boot the Game Boy and we use the play button and touch a certain contact on the PCB with it, we see some glitching on the screen and suddenly some text on the display. Let's zoom in on this. What's that? Instead of failed to dump boot ROM, the boot ROM is now getting hex dumped onto the display. The play button somehow triggered something that let the cartridge dump the boot ROM. Let's look at what exactly is happening here. As you might remember from my video where we looked at the Game Boy cartridge protection, the Game Boy boot ROM loads the logo from the cartridge, scrolls it down the screen and then verifies it. To understand how this attack works, we have to look at what happens to the memory during the boot of the device. Normally, the first 16 kilobytes of memory are mapped directly to the cartridge bank 0. Any memory access to this address range will read data from the cartridge ROM. During boot, however, the first 256 bytes of memory are mapped to a mask ROM that is in the Game Boy CPU. And this ROM contains a bit of code and a bit of data, and it will first load the logo from the cartridge, then scroll it down the screen, then verify it, and then finally, as literally the last instruction, unmap the boot ROM from memory. Afterwards, execution will continue on the cartridge, and if the cartridge now tries to access address 0, it will read data from the cartridge memory, and in my case say failed to dump boot ROM, because it's already unmapped. Now, if we manage to find a way to skip the unmapped boot ROM instruction, the boot ROM would stay in memory and the code on the cartridge would be able to read and display the boot ROM. One of the techniques that you can use to cause an instruction skip is called fault injection. You might remember it from the video where I hacked the AirTags. We drop power for a very short amount of time at a very precise location, and that skipped an instruction in the boot ROM of the chip. Now with the play button, we are doing something very similar, even though it's much simpler and much less precise. If we hook an oscilloscope up to the contact, we can see that there's a 4 MHz sine wave signal on it. And guess what? The Game Boy CPU is running at 4 MHz, even though it takes multiple cycles to actually execute an instruction. So this is the main clock signal that controls how fast the Game Boy is executing. And if we modify this signal, for example by connecting the play button to it, or much easier by scratching it with a grounded jumper wire, we are corrupting that clock signal. And just like with voltage glitching, corrupting that clock signal can cause the CPU to skip instructions. This is called clock glitching, and we will look at some more complex examples of this in the future. Now, by hand, we can't really control well how many instructions we are skipping, and often the Game Boy will just crash or reset. However, we can make it more likely to work. If we use the regular GBDK, Game Boy Development Kit settings, our code will be at the beginning of the cartridge. So the boot ROM will execute and then run directly into our dumping code. If we try to glitch this, chances are high that we will jump to somewhere in the middle or even behind our dumping code. If we move our dumping code to the end of the cartridge memory and then fill the whole space in between with knobs, instructions that do nothing, we can jump to anywhere in the knob area and then just slide into our dumping code. And that is exactly what my cartridge does. You can find it and its code linked in the description. Now, I did not come up with this approach. In fact, it's quite well known in the Game Boy hacking community. I first saw it in Gekkio's awesome talk at Disobey 2018, but apparently the jumper wire approach was discovered by Ben Venn in 2014. And even before that, in 2008, Costis glitched the Super Game Boy to get its boot ROM using an FPGA. Before that, Nevixty used a decapped Game Boy CPU and a microscope to literally read out the bits from the mask ROM. Now, thanks again for all the support, and I hope you like this somewhat different approach to a 100,000 subscriber special. I hope to see you on this channel again soon. Thanks.